Spin us a tale, bard. Wax poetic, a story of a monster hunter.
No, tell us a story about romance and forbidden love.
Stories like that'll rot your brain. Instead, I'll tell you about the legend of King Rob. Rob led a group from a faraway land to an untamed wilderness untouched by human hand. His people were tired and sought a better life. Their town was destroyed, victims of civil strife. With no food, shelter, or weapons to bear, they'd need to act quick, build a home to share. Hay for beds, lumber for walls. Ramsay and Osmond worked hard, no task too small. Osfrith and Grimbold, laborers indeed. For their new home, they'll sweat and bleed. Rob organized the men into 2 different shifts, continuous productivity, a necessary rift. The men would need bows and Ramsay was the man. His carpentry skills are critical, ranged defense is the plan. In the middle of town a storeroom came to be. It'll also serve as the citadel, nice job Stanley. Some settlers slept, their minds free. They dreamt of freedom, King Rob's first decree. The sun set, the moon rose, trees were chopped. Hunger grows. Mushrooms were consumed to satisfy their tummies. Sigmund built a research table because he's no dummy. Goda takes a break from her labors. She's a crafty recruit. She prays to the heavens for adventure and loot. As the days rolled by, a town came to be. Rippingale is its name. It'll be grand, you'll see. Though he's a tanner, a cheerful one at that. Ramsay wrote chronicles, on the floor they sat. Rippingale prospered, Godwin prepared a feast. Of berries and mushrooms, for he lacked meat from slain beasts. But King Rob had a plan to change that for good. He ordered construction of bows, go hunting they should. Crops must be grown, if the settlement is here to stay. Research and research, Grimbold showed us the way. The earth was cultivated, the ground broken and tilled. Cabbage and carrots planted deep, the seeds lay still. Rob took up the first bow, as any leader should. Deer grazing on grasses at the edge of the wood. A visitor appeared, a refugee had arrived. Her name is Purnell, she wants to survive. Rippingale did not think twice. They opened their arms, fully aware of the impending harm. Religious zealots arrived the next day. They demanded Purnell, they wanted to take her away. Rob is no coward, he will not surrender the girl. He will rally his people and violence will unfurl. Ramsay came in clutch, he crafted one more bow. Goda grabbed it quickly, in battle her skills will show. Woefully unequipped, yet focused and steady, the people gathered together, spike traps at the ready. The zealots charged in, confident and brash, but once the arrows hit, they made a mad dash. Over the spikes they ran to our doors to break. Henry was ended, others followed in his wake. The door did not hold, to maces it crumbled. It's now up to Rob to make sure they're not humbled. Grimbold was not scared, he threw the first punch. Followed by Ramsay, Stanley, Kane, a frenzied bunch. Their resolve is solid, but the enemy carried iron, and struck back with force, each whack a siren. The noise of battle is poetic in a way, good versus evil, but who's really to say? Blood mixed with rain, combatants traded blows. Kane and Godwin dropped, desperation grows. A final push and the enemy fell back. Defeated they ran from the town they had planned to sack. Rippingale prevailed, Rob was so proud. Work is paused, celebrations are allowed. The people geared up with loot from the dead. It was Rippingale, not zealots, that came out ahead. Life moved on, from winter they cannot hide. Godwin shot a deer, or at least he tried. Until the crops grow while the hunters are away, slaves to hunger they will stay. At last a deer was slain. Grimbold picked it up. To the butcher's table it goes, the people will sup. Over time the food stockpile grew. Meat, cabbage, mushrooms, enough for a stew. Summer is coming, it'll make the foods rot. Blackened and moldy, edible it is not. Plans were laid for a cellar below ground. Down there, cooler temperatures abound. Rob envisioned a great tower of limestone block, a symbol of power. Crops finally grew, harvests were plentiful. Kane is the cook and he's not the least bit resentful. Dedicated to research, smarter they grow. They even wrote textbooks to show how much they know. Another stranger arrived, from her head she bled. Catherine is her name, Rob gave her food and a bed. The summer sun shined bright, the crops vibrant and strong. Rippingale was thriving, happiness and laughter, merriment and song. Iron and limestone crumbled at each swing of the pickaxe, and the cellar came along nicely, but it's no time to relax. Expansions are underway, the kitchen gets a second floor. Red currant made into wine, then life becomes less of a bore. Osmond worked to craft a limestone block, and smelters made ingots from iron rock. Summer turned to fall, trees turned yellow. Purnell lit fires to keep the rooms nice and mellow. Peace is only a temporary thing. Slavers arrived, sharpened arrows they bring. Rob understood the threat of a ranged attack. Crossbowmen must be dealt with first, this is a fact. The raiders charged in, some were shot down. Dead bodies lay still or turned red and brown. Rob's men fought well, arrows hit their mark. The raiders stood no chance, a shot in the dark. Victory brought peace and new technology. Goda equipped a crossbow, she's locked and ready. Kane and Stanley exchanged small talk. Of freedom and liberty they would not mock. It was no surprise when a pigeon arrived with news. Of Rippingale's good fortune, a golden age ensues. Gerald needed asylum, a man on the run. From barbarian cannibals, they ate people for fun. It is no surprise when raiders arrived in force. There is one thing they wanted, a human snack of course. But the settlers ran to battle stations, they were prepared. Chainmail, helmets, and shields, these raiders should be scared. Let the arrows fly, cried Rob. They shot straight down into the enemy blob. The cannibals were tough and their armor thick. They survived the gauntlet and broke down the door quick. Up the stairs they ran, but they met resistance. Stanley Ramsey Kane pushed back with persistence. Gerald watched in suspense, he had no weapons to wield. His fate hung in the balance, but Rob would not yield. The enemy fell apart just like the rest. Rippingale proved again to be the best. Some of the people took injuries, left blood on the field. They were carried to bed, given time to heal. Time moved on, Rob's tower took form. The town progressed, prosperity the new norm. A question posed to Rob of the fate of the defeated. Bury them in the valley, he said, graves are needed. This will be known as the Valley of the Dead, reminder of yesterday's dread. Sigmund and Goda worked hard and fast. Winter is coming, warmth will not last. Another raid came, this time from the third coming. But the church was dealt with, arrows humming. Temperatures dropped, the world turned white. Warm fires burned brightly, it was quite a sight. Ramsey learned quickly, he crafted crossbows. Rob built a cooking stove to stave hunger woes. Winter passed without incident, snow went away. Spring brought flowers and raiders Rob's way. Rippingale was dominant, as hardened veterans tend to be. They routed the enemy, but some scurried free. To the fortune of Rippingale, a scribe arrived. Helene will write theses, and the town will thrive. Sigmund struck gold, very proud of himself. Purnell smelted gold ingots, so much love. A great lightning bolt struck one rainy afternoon. Rippingale stood strong, but evil is coming soon. Rob received intelligence that a great force marched his way to ransack his town, but he was not dismayed. With mechanical parts, he made stronger traps. They'd rip and tear and cause great mishap. The people ran about, constructed with haste. The tower neared completion, but it was too late. The church had returned, they harbored a grudge. Many ranged archers, but Rob would not budge. Their defenses weren't complete, there weren't many choices. People gathered together, many worried voices. To engage the archers directly spelled certain defeat, so they'd shelter within these walls. And as the enemy turned the corner, they'd meet Rob and his men, and his giant brass balls. With Rob out in front, they formed a line. He promised them his best, or trying he'd die. The fight for freedom is nothing short of divine. The men gained confidence, Rob would not lie. A swarm of red, the church moved in to attack. Helene charged screaming, she wouldn't hold back. Rob shielded his men, a man of his word. He gave his life, the people lost their lord. The men kept fighting, Sigmund died next, followed by Helene on her reckless quest. The infantry rushed in to cause a scramble. They needed a distraction, a noble preamble. Grimbold fell, but only disabled. Cain not so lucky, his life now a fable. The men charge forward, doing their job. They give it their best for old King Rob. This is the distraction they needed, the enemy in a gaggle. Goda fired faster, with fate she'd haggle. Stanley knocked out, Ramsay is dead. Gerald fought bravely, swung for the head. The enemy archers began to drop. Each body fell with a resounding plop. Unfortunately for Godwin, she didn't last. She took an arrow to the face, a sharp blast. No time to mourn, the church was through the doors, so the men repositioned to do battle some more. From the high ground they fired at the church's consternation. The bloody red fanatics ran about in desperation. And just like that, victory was theirs. A battle won, but only by a hair. 2 enemy remained, they tried to flee, but Rippingille would extract its mortal fee. The survivors shuffled back to their beds, shouldering the wounded, stepping over the dead. The town was quiet except for the buzzing of flies. Suspended in a permanent shadow, its people cry. In their time of need, a stranger offered aid. Hunloft the doctor, join us they bade. Duty called, the people left their beds to honor the fallen, their comrades, the dead. The bodies from the church, to the valley they went. Placed in dirt, to hell they are rightfully sent. Fallen brethren, bodies enshrined in stone, to last for all time, until nothing is left but bone. Ramsay, Cain, Sigmund, Godwin, the bodies of these 4, laid to rest, they died in the fall of 1354. Helene was never found, she perished in the fight. Her selfish charge into danger was an unforgettable sight. Only King Rob remained. He lay still in the rain. Though he is quiet now, his life was loud. He fought for freedom, he made his people proud. Osfrith, Gada, Grimble, Purnell, Gerald, Catherine, Osmond, Hunlof stood by the pyre, while Stanley retrieved their beloved sire. Flames shot forth, savage and intense. Rippingille stood by in silent lament. Though King Rob is gone, his message stands eternal. Freedom or death, resist all that is infernal.
You gave a love story after all, of a king that loved his people more than himself.
I guess you're right.
What happened to the people of Rippingille?
That story, well, that story has yet to be written.